Oh, I'm muted. It's just at the top of the hour, so why don't we get rolling, Bondilyn?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do this. We've got a lot to talk about today, Marilyn.
I know, I'm excited. So I'm super excited today to talk about this topic, but we're going to welcome someone really exciting and amazing. Some of you may know her, that she's just joined the WAV Group marketing team recently. So I just wanted to give you a quick overview on kind of where we come from. So I'm the founding managing partner of WAV Group. So we do consulting in all different types of things for brokers. We also run the RE Technology, which is if you don't have a subscription to that, put your email address in here and we'll get you one, because that's a great way to learn about all different types of marketing technologies. Helps you to stay in tune with what's happening out there. Prior to joining the real estate industry, I was actually the senior VP of marketing for Fisher Price Mattel. So I did all kinds of fun marketing projects, as you can imagine, working with parents of 3-year-olds. That was super fun. Lots of TV and all kinds of great stuff. And prior to that, I was involved with all kinds of different consumer marketing projects. Today, we do a bunch of consumer research, and we've done many, many branding projects throughout the real estate industry as well. So super excited to be here. And Bondilyn is our the new leader of our marketing agency. She's amazing. She's running our agency, but this is not her first rodeo. She's actually been running marketing agencies and with a lot of digital focus and things like that for over 20 years. So she started when she was 6.
Oh, thank you.
She was also the founder and CEO of eMerge, which was a digital marketing software. Some of you may have used it or use it now. That was sold over to Elm Street, and then she became the chief marketing officer for Elm Street and the Elevate platform, if you guys are familiar with that. And she was the overseeing marketing for 13 different brands. So she's really good at understanding how to talk effectively to agents, to consumers, to brokers, to the MLS and association audience. So she's got lots of marketing stripes. So welcome, Bondilyn. We're super excited to have you as part of our team.
I am so happy to be here, Marilyn. And I was so excited yesterday when you and I were prepping and discussing today's webinar. And I think it's funny because between the two of us, I think that we have seen every marketing misstep and mistake that a brokerage could make. And I know today we're really focused on sort of delivering that 50,000-foot view of really developing a comprehensive marketing strategy and roadmap and some of our common missteps. But I think that if we really were to dig in, you and I could probably talk for 3 straight days.
I think we could too. The rest of you may not be still here with us, but we would be very excited about it. And you bring up a really good point about the word marketing. To me is one of those words. It's just so generic, and it means different things to different people. But when we say marketing, what we really mean is way more than what some brokerages think of. And when they think of marketing, they think of marketing properties, right? And it's not that that's not a cool and important part of the process. But marketing is really a lot more than that. It's the strategy behind where is your company going? How does it compete effectively? How does it do that profitably? How does it, attract consumers to its house? How does it work and help agents that work with them be completely productive and want to stay with the business? It's all of those things, right? And at the end of the day, marketing really is one of the key drivers of the company and of the profitability of the company. So when we say marketing, we mean a lot more than a new logo design or anything like that. Not that that's not super important, but it's just one component of a much larger brand story.
100%. And, a lot of brokerages, if you have a marketing person or a marketing team, those people are typically focused on providing marketing resources to the agents directly to the consumers. And yeah, that's just one facet of a broader marketing roadmap or strategy. And so, we're really looking at sort of that foundational, business development, like, who are you as a company? What are your growth goals? And then what is that roadmap of how you're going to get there? And then what are the marketing steps that have to go into place to help you achieve those long-term sustainable goals as an organization? So that's what we're going to dig into today.
And just out of curiosity, if you guys, people that are on the call today are actually in the marketing, have marketing responsibilities or run marketing in your companies, if you can just put a 1 in the chat, I'd love to see how many of you are there. And I think both of us can can relate that sometimes marketing is an absolutely no-win job, right? Everybody that, things sort of roll downhill to marketing sometimes. So for those of you that sometimes feel burned out or feel like nobody's listening to you or nobody cares about you, we care about you because we know how hard it is to be in marketing. So with that, why don't we turn over to our first misstep, potential misstep.
Yeah. And so these slides, everybody, I know there's a lot of text on here, and we're going to send you, we actually have a download that we are going to share with you. Actually, Jason in the background, if you want to go ahead and drop that link into the chat for people, all of this is on a download for you. So don't feel like you have to take a lot of notes. If we have a special topic we're addressing or we sort of deviate, we might tell you, hey, make a note of this, but otherwise everything is already in a document for you. So we really just want you to dig in. And also, if you have questions for Marilyn or if you want us to expand on a certain topic, just go ahead, put that in the chat or into the Q&A. We'll be moderating that. And then we also have Jason and Michael in the background who are available to chat with you as well. So just wanted to make sure. So Marilyn, we kind of led into this already, the concept of a comprehensive marketing strategy, right? And what that really means for you as a brokerage. And a lot of times what I see is that brokers tend to look at very, very short-term goals, immediate gratification. And we need those small and those short-term wins, but a true marketing roadmap is going to look at where do you want to be in a month, this quarter, a year, 5 years from now, and what is that growth path going to look like? And a true marketing strategy is going to help you every single step along that course. And you'll have those short wins that are along the way, but you're working towards a larger and broader overarching strategy.
Yeah. And, as we talked about marketing being in the center, marketing strategy has to very much be attached to company profitability and growth too, right? I mean, you don't just do these things for fun. You do these because you want to recruit a certain number of agents. You want to help each agent be more productive. You want to grab more market share in a particular price point. There's a lot of different components of sales planning that goes into this. So this marketing supports that brand and sales success, right? And if it's disconnected, then it's easy, especially at times like this when brokers are getting nervous, to just slice. And that's not what we're looking for, right? We're looking for quantitative results that tie to the business success.
Right. And I know we're going to talk about KPIs or key performance indicators in a little bit, because those are very, very important. And it's like you just said, a lot of brokers, they start to cut over in marketing land when they become nervous or there's, fluctuation or unease in the market. And a lot of times I think, we made a joke about it yesterday. Marketing is always butting heads with the finance team, right? Because the thing is, I think a lot of people look at marketing as a very gray area. They have a difficult time tying values or return on investment to certain types of marketing initiatives. And quite honestly, in today's digital age and with the technology we have available, it doesn't have to be that gray area. It can be very black and white. It's very formulaic. I know that if I spent $1,000 here, I should be able to understand the return on investment that $1,000 in each of my different marketing channels has returned. And so I know we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but that is something that when we're working with a brokerage to look at, okay, what are your short-term marketing goals? What are those wins that you need for your brokerage today, for your agents, for your audience today? And then what does that look like? How does that layer and build into a long-term sustainable plan for you? And so that's something that we really have to look at when we're developing that strategy or that roadmap with clients. Trying to click on the next one, Marilyn. There we go.
Okay.
So defining your target audience, this is something, Marilyn, that I have dealt with an awful lot with the brokerages that I've worked with all across the United States. And I think, we see a lot of brokerages, particularly like smaller independents that are coming into the game that are really trying to be a little bit of everything to everyone. And what we really find when we see that is that, you're never really truly speaking to the needs and the challenges or the concerns of the people that you serve. And I think that it's really important for brokers to look at sort of all of the people that they serve and make sure that that's considered in their marketing roadmap, right? So you might have investors or a board of directors, right? That is somebody that you have to answer to and provide feedback on how your marketing dollars are being spent and the outcome of those. The agents that you serve, you have to answer to them as well. They're one of your audience segments. If you really want to recruit and retain top quality agents into your organization, and then obviously you also have that consumer audience. So those are just 3 different categories, or audience segments that you have to consider when you're developing a comprehensive marketing strategy. And you have to think about their journey, their entire lifetime journey, in every single step of that plan as well.
And even within the consumer segment, some folks, like we were just talking to a brokerage not too long ago that was very, very successful, what I would call more of a mainstream brand, and decided that it wanted to be in luxury, which of course, why wouldn't you want to be in luxury, right? There's big money there.
Good stats there.
Right. But the thought that a brand that's mainstream can immediately flip over and compete with brands that are positioned as, for luxury customers, that's not as easy as it might sound, right? So if at that as an example, do you create a new division? Do you create a new brand? Is it a sub brand of your main brand? How does it act differently? How does it promote differently? How does it reach out? How does it, attract? Does it go to, Philharmonic sessions? Who knows what it looks like, right? But it is important to, again, if you try to be everything to everyone, it's an easy temptation in a market like this where there's so little inventory that you don't want to leave anything on the table. We totally get why you get there. But sometimes if you try to if your brand messaging is kind of all over the place, then you kind of miss the mark with everyone. So you do have to find some focus. It's tough to do that right now, given that there's so little business out there. But with the business that is out there, when you're really known as being great at something, and I'm sure many of your brands already are known for being great at a lot of things, it's important to think about that focus.
Yeah, one of the analogies that I use is that concept of digging a well, right? Some people dig a very, very shallow well. That's the sort of trying to be a little bit of everything to everyone and or kind of throwing something at the wall and seeing what sticks. And what we really find is, through an intelligent strategic marketing strategy, we can really look at historically, what is your niche market? Who has traditionally been your highest yielding clientele, and then how do we dig a deeper well there, and then we can always grow from there. But let's really focus on where we have historically seen high performance for your organization. And so one of the notes that we've made here under the think is avatars. And so that's a term we use in developing audience avatars, or who is that ideal audience, right? So if I use that example of the board members or your investors, what are their needs? What do they want from you? And what kind of information and outcome do you need to provide them? And you sort of outline that. You create this entire persona. And then you do the same with your agents. Who are your ideal agents? I have so many brokerages that come to me and say, I want to recruit the top 3% in my market area. And I'm like, yes, you and everybody else in that market area. But once again, do you have, the internal resources to even support those top producers? And, if you don't, you are not going to win there, or you're not going to be able to retain them. That's going to fall flat for you. So really, who are those ideal candidates? How do we outline them? And the same with your consumer audience. And so that's what I mean by that concept of avatars. And it's a really amazing exercise to go through. If you haven't done that, I highly recommend it. Sort of outline those ideal candidates, what they look like, their needs, their challenges, and the value proposition that you bring to attract them.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear from the audience. Is that a topic, because we're going to be doing more of these types of marketing educational webinars, is the topic of how to build different target audiences and identify them and build the avatars or the personas. Is that something that's interesting to you? If it is for anyone, drop a 1 in the chat for us, and because we're trying to figure out where we go next, because there's so many things we could talk about in marketing. We get so excited, but what same thing we're talking about, we have to focus too. So tell us where, what kinds of topics we're talking about today are interesting to you.
Yeah, well, I think it's like we said, today we're doing a little bit of that 50,000 foot view, right? But we can deep dive in and do some really tactical marketing best practices with you. And, doing an avatar study, that would be a lot of fun. And the thing is, your avatars over time may ebb and flow and change and evolve. And so even if this is a study that you did maybe when you first were starting your brokerage, it might be a good time to revisit, hey, what has happened in the market? How have we grown and evolved as an organization? And, do these avatars still match, or should we go in and do some tweaking with that? So we'd certainly love to do some of that with you. So let us know if you'd like to see that.
And we don't mean that your avatars are all people that are blue, by the way.
Don't confuse this with the Hollywood movies.
Exactly.
That's why I had to explain that. Okay. So Marilyn, this is an interesting one. I'm focusing too much on competitors, because part of a really comprehensive marketing strategy is knowing who your competitors are, knowing their strengths, their weaknesses, their business models, their value propositions. So everybody's probably reading this and saying, why are you saying that focusing on the competitors could be a potential pitfall?
Right.
And, for me, what I find, and why we chose to add this there, is we see brokerages tend to get hung up on what competitors are doing in the market, or who's the bright, shiny toy at that moment, right? And so I was working with a bunch of more of traditional brokerage models, and then, the Compasses of the world and the EXPs of the world, right, all start coming in, and then these traditional models start sort of shaking up their foundation or becoming nervous and questioning their roadmaps and their business development strategies. And they start making sort of these knee-jerk decisions that are sort of undermining the foundation of what they're trying to accomplish as an organization. And that's really where I'm saying, the fact is, competition is healthy in any single business. Competition is healthy. And what you really need to do outside of understanding who your competitors are is to really narrow down and focus, what makes your business unique and stand out? What differentiates you from those core competitors in the space? And how do you reinforce that to going back to your audience segment? How do you make sure that you're really standing out and letting them know what makes you unique from those competitors? And it could be a financial business model piece. It could be benefits you offer. It could be training programs. It could be, a slew of different things that really help you stand out from those people. So why we say this is we don't want those unnecessary distractions. It's your business to know your business. You need to know what your competitors are doing, but put that over here and then really double down and focus on who you are and reinforcing that value.
Exactly. We did some focus groups with agents, and we were asking them about, and we didn't call it brand equity, but in effect it was, how powerful is your brand when you're in a listing presentation or when you're talking to customers relative to others? And they would tell us, many of them felt, of course, their own brand was very strong, but then they would describe the 1 or 2 brands that they may be worried about. Right. And sometimes brokers get distracted because agents are pulling you over there. Right? Go do what they're doing, because that's hurting me when I'm in a listing presentation. So sometimes you have to say, all right, what are exactly the point Bondilyn's making? Double down on what is it that makes us who we are, but also makes us responsive to the market, makes us contemporary, makes us interesting to clients. Right. We sometimes you have to continue to evolve your brand value proposition. Doesn't mean you want to ignore what you've done or what they're doing. Of course, you have to stay current. And if any of you are sailors, and I see Victor's on the call, so he'll know what I'm talking about. In sailing, there's times when they say you cover, right? So you go with a boat to just kind of stay with them. Then there's other times when you break away to really get your own, because they call clear air, right? Your own competitive advantage. And it's kind of like this with that too, right? There may be some things that a competitor's doing that does have to be added. I don't mean exactly what Bondilyn was saying. I don't mean, you go crazy to the left when you've been over to the right for a long time. But you do have to stay current, and you do have to think about what makes us uniquely valuable. Are we communicating that what makes us uniquely valuable to our own agents effectively, to potential clients, to prospects, to investors, to all the audiences that Bondilyn described, right? Sometimes we do get off. I mean, do you remember, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, where every single brokerage decided they were a technology company? Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
We've spent 40, we've spent 30, and there's nothing, I mean, the truth is a brokerage is a technology company at some level. You have to be, right? It's a core component, but it doesn't mean you take off of the core value, which is what? Education and support of your client, right? Client support is always what a broker and an agent does best, or if they're doing well. So anyway, it's a fine balance there. We're not saying ignore your competition, but we're not saying become them either, because that's going to take you off of your
right
path.
Well, and that's, it's such a prime example where I've, like going back to traditional models versus some of these, newer business models. Traditional models started freaking out. And then there was a bit of a mass exodus from traditional models, agents moving into some of these more bright and shiny contemporary models. And then they got over there and they're like, okay, well, yeah, I'm inside of this tech company now. So I have these tools and resources, but now I maybe have lost some of that long-term brand recognition, or I've lost some of the training and mentorship programs that some of these more traditional models might offer. And so that goes back to, right, truly understanding the value that you bring to your audience segment, and how you can be of service to them through every step of their customer journey. And I think that's really important. And, one other thing with competition is, I do a lot of recruiting and retention work with brokerages, as you know, and, I've actually worked with some brokerages where they've, become aware of some problems over at some of their competitors in their markets. And so we've actually been able to leverage that in some of their marketing strategies, so as we're speaking or working to recruit inside of, certain markets, we can say, hey, we know that there's a problem over here. So here's how we're going to develop a really strong message that reinforces or addresses those challenges that some of those competitors may be facing. And so there's ways, really strategic and intelligent ways that fit into your roadmap that we can work towards short wins and with strategic marketing messaging.
And that's such a great answer, because another thing that this just comes from broker leadership. I'm sure many of you do this, is in this market, just let's talk about the last 6 to 12 months. For the newer agents that haven't gone through 14 up and down cycles like you guys have, right? They're like, oh my God, the world's ending. They're so afraid, right? So a calm demeanor and a logical, like, it's going to be okay. And oh, by the way, let me tell you what we're doing, right? So you can calm them down, and then you can talk about the kinds of campaigns that Bondilyn's talking about to say, we're going to help people understand why this brand has been around for 20, 50, 100 years, whatever it is. There's probably, I know I saw Remax on here. You guys have been around for a couple of years, right? So something to think about too is just, help. It's not just doing something. It's first calming them down and then doing something.
And that kind of leads into our next pitfall, because when we were prepping yesterday, we were really talking about that impatience, and the idea that marketing is truly a marathon and not a sprint. Your business, the entire evolution and growth of your business is typically not going to be, like 100-yard sprint. You're out for the long haul, and you're really looking to build that long-term sustainable business model. And leave behind legacy, right? But we also added this fearful element to it, because there's a lot of noise that is in the market, and consumers become very anxious over that, right? During the pandemic, I mean, people were very, very fearful to put their houses on the market. People didn't know what was happening, just on a global scale. And so we really saw that impact the housing market drastically. But then our agents become fearful. Look at the Silicon Valley Bank. that crashed earlier this week, right? And so all of this, there's an awful lot of media and conversation around this. But I think, from a brokerage standpoint, you really have to be able to distill that down, calm people's fears, and be there as a resource to help educate them. And if you're there to service and educate your agents and empower them to agent their help their consumer audience, that's going to be just a huge win for you as a brokerage.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's hard not to get nervous. And I think this is where we're going to talk about the CFO versus the CMO, isn't it? So we've had situations with brokerages where, of course, markets, the market's softer, where nobody's hiding that fact, right? And sometimes the head of finance, marketing, or accounting, or whatever their title is, will go to the broker owner and say, we got to slice budgets. Okay, that makes sense, right? If we have less cash flow, we're going to have to slow down our cash burn. That makes sense. But sometimes those decisions are made very arbitrarily. It's like, oh, that's the most expensive tool we have. Let's just get rid of it. And one of the things that we've learned is that is not always the best answer, right? Maybe it is, but to do that arbitrarily without talking to your agents first. So we have a product we call the Agent Experience Index. And what that does is it measures, how do your agents feel about each of the technologies you have, the training you have, the support you have, the managers you have, et cetera, et cetera. You get a 360-degree view at what is really working and what really isn't, right? So when you're going to cut the stuff that they don't care about, or that they don't believe is helping them grow their business. Don't just take the most expensive thing. In that particular case, we did research and we found out it was clearly that was not the right answer. That was by far the most popular tool, had the most engagement. People felt like it was really helping them with their business. So that would have been a big mistake. And, so anything you can do to more thoughtfully, if you're going to cut budgets, which many are and have to, do it in a way that it's not going to hurt or create disruption. If your agents are already nervous and already a little uncomfortable, the last thing you want to do is provide them less support, right? You want to provide them more support at this time, and find things that you can dust off and get rid of that nobody's going to notice. But don't more most important tool. That's not the right thing to do at this point.
That's such a good point, Marilyn. It was funny because at the height of the pandemic, I was working with a very large franchise organization that had a very strong foothold down in Southern California. And they started, right, the CFO came in and said, we've got to start doing some slashing here. We've got to cut costs. And what they did is they ended up cutting administrative personnel, like drastically by 2/3. And It was a very large, organization. And that ended up unnerving the agents. They really heavily relied on those administrative resources, and then those were suddenly gone. And so the perception that the agents had was that business was really being hit very hard, and that it was very volatile, and they started seeing a mass exodus from over to other, and it was a really big problem. And by the time they realized what was happening and went on a course correction, they had lost about 25% of their agents to a competitor who stepped in and leveraged the opportunity. And so it's so important that when you're looking at cost-cutting measures, that you really do that full analysis and really understand where is the perception of value. And you might actually need to double down in some spots, in order to continue to reinforce that. But you also, I always say you have to have enough financial resources in place to support your company as, the market ebbs and flows. And we see that, a lot of new agents coming into the game, a lot of the coaches that are out there say, hey, you need to have 6 months of, living, in the bank, because it's going to be a slow growth, and that can be really difficult and challenging for people. And that's why we see such large exodus of agents, early on, like within their first, few years in the industry. And businesses can have that same problem. So make sure that you have the financial resources, make sure, right, going back to that roadmap, that intelligent long-term strategy. But you also have to understand what needs to happen this quarter, this year, and then what needs to happen, where do we need to be in 24 months, 36 months, et cetera. And so it goes back to that really intelligent long-term roadmap again.
Yeah, and it's you hit on something. So there were many brokerages that had done very well in the last 3 years, right? Hopefully you put some cash away for a rainy day. A lot of the smart, in my opinion, the smartest brokers right now look at markets like this as, how can I win? How can I buy something that might be less expensive now? How can I even buy marketing resources that might be less expensive now? They say they use this as a land grab, as a time to grow their market share, even if they don't see the profitability of it in the next couple of years because the market's softer. Once you come out the other end, we had a brokerage that came out the other end and they ended up being number one in the market. They were not number one when they went in. This was in the 2008, 9, 10, the market that hopefully none of us have to go through ever again, right? It was not fun, but keeping yourself not fearful and then thinking strategically about, okay, what happens in a down market and what are the things that I can do that are going to make me a lot stronger when we come out the other side? Because we all know we're going to come out the other side. And we don't even really know if we're in a down market right now. Are we just in a normal market? We don't even know, right? It's such a weird market.
The last few years, it's been such a roller coaster. One thing that I'm a big fan of, and this is something that I know that, from my past, and I know, Marilyn, you work with a lot of brokerages on this too, is diversification of your business portfolio. And so during the pandemic, that was an opportunity to sit down with a lot of brokerages and look at, like, okay, what sorts of ancillary products and services can we add so that we're diversifying our business portfolio? So if things aren't doing super great over in this one particular area, right, we're still dealing with low inventory, we've got issues over there, we have a whole other set of revenue streams that are coming into our corporate umbrella that really can help sustain us or offset where we have problems in certain, troubled markets. And I think that's a lot of fun to work with brokerages on.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. It's frankly where some brokers survived 2008, 9, 10 with those third, the core services that they offered in addition. But when we think about this, going back to our original concept of overall marketing strategy, it isn't just target audience, it's also business units, right? So how do I connect the dots that my agents can help improve my conversion rates on mortgages, as an example? Like, how do I connect those two brand stories, obviously within RESPA compliance? But that's something to think about too, is each business unit can grow commensurate with how much you integrate them with each other, and each one can help each other at some level.
Exactly. All part of that foundation. And so another big thing in the foundation, Marilyn, now we get to really nerd out here a little bit, but we see a lot of brokerages that just have really poor systems, protocol, and workflows in place. And this goes back, when we were talking about knowing who those different audience segments are and understanding their challenges and needs through their entire customer journey and beyond. We really need to have processes in place that are going to help us navigate every single step of that. And I'm also, brokers, we know, wear a lot of different hats. You have to be everything inside of your organization, as many business owners are. So your time is very, very precious. And so I'm a huge fan, of course, coming from a tech background as well, is looking at the technology that you have available for your brokerage, your operating platforms, your back office. Are you leveraging and using every single part and piece of that technology? What can you automate? How can you automate redundant daily activities, whether it's marketing activities or other, pieces of the business through your technology. And so that's a really good time to come in and just do that evaluation, work with your tech partners and really say, hey, we're having challenges here. I'm spending an awful lot of time every single day or every week or month, in this sort of operational capacity. Am I using my technology right? Is there something that we can add to this that's going to streamline this process for me and free up precious time for myself or my agents that we can better utilize elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, there's been so much marketing automation innovation in the last few years. Then there's great companies that are specifically within real estate that do that, but a lot of it is, like you say, it's connecting different systems to one another. Some of the brokerages that we work with, we were talking about one yesterday in Florida that does a phenomenal job of really becoming the center of the workflow. So they understand what the value that their partners are playing, but they also they add their own value in terms of how to convert a lead into a engaged potential client, and then follow that with home ownership management, right? So how do we stay with someone from the beginning? They've just begun to maybe think about doing something, even if they're a renter, all the way through to home ownership and all the way back around again, right? Because we were laughing about the other day. It's really fun to buy a house. It kind of sucks to own one. It's a lot of work, right? So there's tools like milestones.ai out there right now that are awesome at helping you maintain that person. So the worst thing that can happen is you felt like you had a great relationship with someone, and then 5 years later, 10 years later, 6 years later, they come back and you find out that they went to a competitor because you didn't stay in touch and you didn't maintain that or deepen that relationship.
And that's such a known issue in the real estate sector. And it's like a joke. Everybody jokes about it. Like that whole, right? How many memes do you see on social media? Like, oh, I lost my best friend because they worked with somebody else. But there's a statistic out there for every $1,000 that is spent on generating lead, you only spend $10, an average of $10 to actually nurture and cultivate that lead. And my thing, coming from a marketing background and coming from understanding that I have to, have intelligent ROI tied to all of my marketing dollars. I really want to understand, like, if I spent $1,000 to generate leads over here, what is happening to those leads when they come into our CRM solution? What happens when they're distributed out to the agents? What are agents doing with them? And how can I use that technology to create intelligent workflows that are going to nurture and touch, create valuable, meaningful touch points along that customer journey? And then, aid that agent in understanding this is what needs to happen next. This is the next step in that customer journey to help drive greater ROI. And so it's kind of really nerdy stuff, and it can be kind of complicated sometimes to go in and work through that, but it is probably one of the most valuable exercises as a broker you can do to drive ROI for your business, all facets of your business, as well as that of your agents.
Absolutely. I know it is the nerdy stuff. We love it because we're marketing nerds, but it really does make the biggest difference. And the more than you can automate it, for your agents. So you're the one at the center of it, providing, it's another way to provide value. If they see that those 1,000 leads turned into not, 5 actual clients, but 500 clients. I mean, I'm exaggerating, right? It really does make a big difference that they see the value of what you're providing to them. It's a great retention strategy in addition to a great productivity and profitability strategy.
Exactly. And so everybody that's in our audience, this is another great topic, Marilyn, that we could do a deep dive into and take people through what it looks like to develop, right, an example workflow. Say, I love the idea, a renter lead, right? So it's a renter lead. They come in, what happens? What is their journey and their experience like with you? And then how do we take them through either their rental journey, their journey to home ownership, and then even, referrals on the backside, right? And so if this is something that you guys would be interested in out in the audience, that you would like to do maybe an hour long where we just work through some example workflows, what those look like, what touch points could look like, go ahead and just put like workflow in the webinar chat. and let us know, because I think that this is something, we can talk about it on this sort of conceptual level, but it can be a little complicated to really dig in and really think about all of the different ways that and touch points that we can create over that life cycle. So we would be happy to take people through that if you'd like to do that.
Yeah, so put workflow in there if that's one that's interesting to you.
Awesome.
Okay.
So let's keep the geek going here for a few minutes and talk about data. KPIs, and this goes back to a point I made earlier where brokers, like marketing people act like it's this gray area. I don't know. I spent $1,000 over here, or, $5,000 over here. And I don't really have a grasp on how it's performed for me, what it's done. Should I keep it going or should I not? And I suspect that's probably a pretty common theme amongst everybody who's attending today's webinar, because we all deal with it. But, the fact is, like, your good marketing strategy will have key performance indicators, or KPIs, that you look at. So for example, if you are going to spend $1,000 a month on a social media manager, you're going to have certain metrics in place that are going to help you understand what it is they're doing, the impact on your business, and how that is driving brand awareness or lead generation or whatever to you, right? You're going to have very specific KPIs, versus if you're spending $1,000 a month on lead acquisition through a third-party vendor, there's going to be very specific KPIs that you're going to want to measure there that differ from what you're going to look at with that $1,000 a month spent on your social manager. And so it's really important to understand, right? And going back, Marilyn, when we said, okay, why do CFOs always want to cut marketing budgets? Because they don't have a true understanding. These guys live in a spreadsheet all day long. Everything is, ones and zeros to them, kind of thing, right? And so they need to understand, hey, we're spending money here because this is what the projected outcome is. This is what we're trying to accomplish. And then this is what the actual outcome is. And so that you can tie that value back to that spend, because you know exactly what it is that you're measuring and what that impact is.
Yeah, that's the key. And, one of the things that we see sometimes is that technology partners that you guys work with aren't always as forthcoming as you would like them to be in terms of who's using what, how often are they using it, what are they doing with it, right? So that's one thing to push on, is you need transparency on, because it isn't necessarily I do this and it turns into a sale in 10 minutes, right? We all know that lead cycle can go for a long, long time. But understanding the value that you're bringing with a variety of different technologies, trainings, et cetera, getting feedback, but really understanding is, which of this stuff matters. It always worries me when I hear a broker say, oh, I'm going to buy that because it sounds really good to my agents, or, oh, it looks really good in a listing presentation. Okay, those are not bad goals, right? But ideally, every dollar you spend actually does something. Right? It actually helps people, build a relationship with the client, deepen a relationship with the client, attracts more prospects, does something that ultimately will turn into business down the road. We laughed about it, but there's a lot of shiny objects in real estate, right? Oh, that looks really fun. Let's do that. Well, why? Ask the why. And that's a really good thing to ask everybody you talk to about, what is the why? What are you going to promise me here that's going to make my business more profitable? Because everybody knows broker margins are about that big and getting smaller.
Hey,
right?
that's pretty big.
And so, thinking about the more quantitative and the more transparency you have on what's working and what isn't, the better decisions that you can make and the more profitable you'll become.
Yeah. And this, the data, like if you have good technology in place, a lot of that data is going to exist for you. And so whether you have a transparency, a dashboard that is built for you, or you're switching between multiple dashboards, unfortunately, that's a reality that a lot of brokers have to deal with. But, there's a lot of really intelligent ways to help you, calculate and formulate data. KPIs is another one that would be really good to dig into, because I have tons of spreadsheets and things that I could ultimately share that demonstrate, hey, for all of these different marketing channels, these are the KPIs that we recommend that a brokerage, evaluate. And you can look at that, I like to look at things, I kind of like to have my finger on the pulse in real time of what's happening, but you can look at them, on a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, biannually, and then annual basis. And that really helps you as you're planning, how does it fall into your roadmap? And then as you're planning budgets for the following year, you can really look at what's working and what's not, and really make intelligent strategic decisions. So data is really key. It's kind of nerdy, but it's part of what takes away that gray area and makes things a little more black and white for a brokerage.
And to the degree that you can, if you can make those trends visual, like literally a graph. So if you see things continue to go up, or you see them go up and trail right off, those kinds of things are, for those of us that don't live inside of data all the time, it just visually gives you a clue that tool's really working. We need to keep going, or that one isn't, and we need to think about cutting it back.
Exactly. And so I like that you sort of teased out our final pitfall here, at least for today's conversation, is FOMO, of the technology train, that fear of missing out. And, there's so many bright and shiny toys. And, Marilyn, I think you and I were joking about this yesterday. Right now, everybody's, Chat GPT, right? Oh my God, like, what is this? And
Yep.
Last year it was all FTPs and cryptocurrency. And, if there's an acronym for it, everybody's excited. And I always think, as a business leader and as a forward thinking professional, that our brokers are, you always want to be aware of these. You want to be able to educate and speak intelligently to them. But what the problem is that, I tend to see is truly getting distracted by these, right? Kind of that idea of how you get distracted by what the competition is doing over here, and not really understanding fundamentally how that technology is truly going to aid your business, how it should be used, why it should be used, and what the overarching financial benefit or impact would ultimately be. And so what'll happen is, if you don't have that strong foundation and roadmap in place, it's very easy to veer off course and get distracted with these, bright and shiny toys, and really sort of veer off your roadmap and lose track of your long-term sustainable growth.
Absolutely. And, we worked with one broker, and it literally took them 3 months to look at all the different credit cards and billing systems that they had to figure out what toys they even owned. They literally didn't even know. And when they finally did it, they realized they had 3 of this and 4 of that and 6 of this, and one broker on one office wanted this and another office wanted that. And there's no way to have a efficient workflow when you don't even literally know what tools that you have, right? You got to simplify that thing and figure out a whole spectrum of stuff that you think matters. And that, again, answers that why, about why it's meaningful and why it's going to help your agents be successful and make the brokerage profitable. At the end of the day, it's about those 2 things, right?
You do see a lot of technology overlap, right? So a broker might invest in a piece of software, and, and going back to that conversation we were having, about systems and workflows and processes, you might be underutilizing that software, but then you go over here and you license another piece of software that's maybe filling in some gaps that maybe exist over here. You just didn't even know that you had that available in that technology, or you've got all this overlap. And so what's happening is your budgets and your technology, right, your tech stack is starting to become kind of bloated and convoluted. It's not really helping you. You don't have that visibility or transparency into really what's working and what's not. Your agents become frustrated. It becomes disjointed for the consumer audience and what their experience looks like with your brokerage. And so, it kind of creates these systemic issues. And so, it's always really good, at least on an annual basis, to do sort of a tech stack evaluation, or, we also refer to it as like a gap analysis, where you go in and really look at all of the different technology tools you're using, how they work together, what could be consolidated, what can be eliminated, right? You're looking at that data, you're looking at your long-term roadmap, and all of these things really start to come together and really shape that, vision of who you are as an organization. And that's why marketing is so drastically important, because it is such a fundamental foundational element of every part of your business.
Absolutely. So no more FOMO.
No more FOMO. So we've got about 10 minutes left, Marilyn. And I know we just wanted to, sort of kind of just revisit here, right? I mean, there really are not shortcuts. Yes, there's ways that you can get quick wins, but those do not really lead to, that long-term sustainable growth goal. I mean, you really have to put time and effort, patience, you have to have the financial resources. You really have to think about where you are as a company, where you want to grow, and what it's going to take to get there. And if you don't have those internal resources, you really need to, take a long, hard look at, what do you need to invest in? Do you need to bring in a group like WAV Group where we can come in and help evaluate and give you a very, unbiased snapshot of what is happening in your business, where we see opportunity or, for improvement, or gaps or issues that, could be systemic issues for you. And then also, with the marketing expertise, like, do you have internal marketing? Are you a broker who's wearing a marketing hat on top of everything else? Could you use a little external assistance and maybe moving the needle forward in some certain ways? And so I think that's part of the joy of what we do at WAV Group.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. And so, with my joining the WAV Group, Marilyn, we're really expanding what we're doing as a marketing agency inside of WAV. And, I've used this analogy before and I'll use it again. I think, people should look at us at WAV and our marketing agency as sort of that Swiss Army knife, because there's a lot of different ways that we can really come in and provide assistance, whether it's just helping serve as a short-term marketing arm to help you achieve some certain goals or help you do some strategic, annual planning. Or if you're really looking for somebody to really come in and serve as a true extension of your organization for, long-term gains. And so, there's a lot of different ways that we can have a conversation with you at WAV Group. And so I'm really excited to start having some of these conversations with our fabulous brokers.
Yeah, me too. I think you're right. There's sometimes it starts with one question. And one of the questions we're hearing a lot these days is, am I spending my money in the right place? Right? What's it doing for me? Is it really valuable or not? So something as simple as that, where we could look at what you're doing and then pull out those dashboards and the metrics and the kinds of things that are probably available that we'd have to, sort of collect for you and give you a more logical, quantitative answer on, is the money I'm spending in marketing doing something for me? Is it worth it? And then again, tying it back to that larger brand strategy of, where do I want to be in 5 years from now? Do I want to move from 7% market share to 14? Well, if I do that, what can I do in a market like this to take advantage of this and get me going closer to that, right? So again, business goals, marketing goals connect. But if you just literally don't know what you're doing, not that you don't know what you're doing, but you don't know which of what you're doing is meaningful and working or not, that's the kind of thing that we can come in and, relatively inexpensively just kind of give you a gut check on. Yeah, we think that really makes sense. Or sometimes it's not even the tactic might make sense, but the messaging's not right. Right. So it could be, we can look at what you're saying as you're delivering messages too. So lots of ways we can help you without breaking the bank, just to, kind of help you figure out the most effective way to make marketing tie back to your business goals.
Yeah, 100%. So on the screen right now, there's a link to the WAV Group website. I'm sure everybody already knows that, but you can go in there and there's actually contact forms that you can fill out to request a meeting with Marilyn and myself or members of the team, depending on the different business resources that you are looking for. Also shared are Marilyn and my direct emails and our telephone numbers. So if you have any, questions that you would like to ask us directly, or you want to reach out, on the backside of this, a lot of times you sort of simmer on these conversations that we have, and then those questions sort of percolate to the top. So feel free to reach out to us. We love to be here as a resource. I mean, I think that's one of the great values of WAV Group, is that we have our finger on the pulse of everything that's happening in the industry. And so we love to share, our knowledge and be of service to help you and your business grow.
Absolutely. So I mentioned it earlier, but I don't know if all of you were on. If any of you would like a free subscription to retechnology.com, because that's a great way to do your own education about how brokers and agents are winning with technology. Just throw your email address into the chat there, and we'll be happy to set you up with a free subscription for that. It's normally a $200 subscription, so we're happy to give it to those that want to work with us in some capacity. And we're also happy to add you to the WAV Group newsletter again, so you can continue to get more opportunity to learn about the kinds of things that we do at WAV Group. And we do lots of things for brokers. We also do just quick commercial for some of our other divisions. We have technology support. We have broker valuations and mergers and acquisitions that we can help you with, which can be part of these strategies, by the way. So there's lots of different ways that we can help you. We have market research services, so lots of things. But thanks guys for putting in your email addresses there. We'll be sure to set you up on that. So with that, we did have one quick question, and if you want to answer this one, that would be great. What's the difference between an avatar and a persona? Is there a difference?
I don't really think of it as a difference. So I think it's just different terms, right? The idea is when you're looking at who your audience is, your different audience segments, and understanding, what it is that makes them tick. And so when we create a persona or an avatar, and I think you can really use those terms interchangeably, it's really about looking at all of the different people that your business touches and services in one way or another, understanding what makes them tick, what their needs and challenges are, and how you as a business are solving for those needs and challenges. And so I think people use those terms interchangeably, and I don't really see a big difference there.
Okay, perfect. Do we have any other questions for the audience before we head out today?
Yeah, and just while we're seeing if any other questions come in, please remember we're going to be sending you a link to this webinar on the backside, and there will be that download for you. So all of the different points that we talked about today, there's a download for you that you can go in and pull up. And then also, if there are topics or deep dives on anything that we discussed today or any other topics from a marketing capacity that you'd like to see us dig into, we're ready to dig in and really, start deep diving with you in a lot more tactical ways and being of service to you. So please let us know that. Give us your feedback. We want to provide really great content that helps your business grow and your agents grow.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for today. Bondilyn, welcome. We're so excited to have you on our team and our new marketing agency. We know it's going to do great things to help brokers succeed. So everybody have a wonderful day, and we'll be back to you probably in the next few weeks with another topic. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye, guys.